video. Oh. We're live. No video introduction this morning. Mark's very confused, but it's my fault because I forgot to switch back. More boomer adjacent activity.
Welcome, folks, to the Capitalist Corner. We are your island of reason in a sea of chaos. And if you've been following the news at all, it's nothing but chaos. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and the vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who is also the host of many and sundry shows. Michael, you want to tell us what is going on with you lately? Because you're probably the hardest working man in show business next to me.
Excuse me? Next to you?
Yeah, that's right.
You brag about working with a cold. You're like, oh, I have to work when I have the sniffles. Okay,
no,
listen.
No, not sniffles. We're gonna seriously sick.
We're going to get sidetracked. The bottom line is, coming up on the Rational Egoists fairly soon, Jim Valiant and I will be breaking down the virtue of integrity and a continuation of our course on using OPAR for self-improvement. Of course, the lovely Persephone and I will be on today, 2:30 Eastern time, to discuss everyday ethics. And, our stuff that we do on the weekend, the Self-Made Soul. Saturday, we're going to be discussing the hierarchy of needs in Maslow's psychology. Also, within that is, of course, self-actualization. So it's a lot of good stuff. We really, on this show, we love it when you like, you share, and you subscribe. And we also like the super chats and the super stickers.
Yes, so please, if you can, be generous with those. We appreciate them. It helps with the algorithm. And this message needs to get out there in the world. So let's make it.
And we really like it when the famous guy on the podcast actually shares the X link. That works very, very well.
Which I did a while ago, Michael. Why aren't you seeing it?
Well, okay, I do see it now. 1 minute ago. I don't know if that's a while ago, but a minute. I will go for a while. So can I tell you about my morning?
In today's quick cycle of news, Michael, with Trump making news 1 minute after another, changing his mind, that's a long time.
Right. So let me tell you what happened. So this morning I woke up at 3 and I couldn't get back to sleep. So what I do when that happens is I just get up and work. So I came across the story about how Trump threatened if the Straits of Hormuz are not open by 7 p.m. tonight, he's going to start hitting the power infrastructure within Iran. So I read an abundance of stuff. I sent it all to you. Persephone is going to post it all to X. It was all about, what this means, what would be the result, that sort of thing, what the threat entailed, how the Iranians might respond. We could talk about that a little bit because it's probably still on the table. But by the time, long before we even got on the show, Trump was claiming that he had a very productive conversation with the Iranians and that therefore the bombing will be postponed for 5 days. The Iranians almost immediately responded and said they don't know what the hell he's talking about, that there's no negotiations took place. There's no talks. He's previously said there's nobody even to negotiate with. So I don't know what that is. And so Trump did say this, though. So let me just post it up here.
Mr. President, a top person, don't forget, we've wiped out the leadership phase 1, phase 2, and largely phase 3. But we're dealing with the man who I believe is the most respected and the leader. It's a little tough. We've wiped out everybody.
Is that the Supreme Leader?
No, not the Supreme Leader. We don't. Well, nobody heard of the second Supreme Leader, the Son.
Are these direct?
Nobody. We have not heard from the Son. Every once in a while, you'll see a statement made, but we haven't. We don't know if he's living. But the people that seem to be running it, and they seem that based on really fact, because things they've said have taken place.
Mr. President,
again.
Mr. President, I know you've deployed.
Because I don't want him to be killed. Okay, I don't want him to be killed.
Mr. President, you've deployed.
Nobody wants to be that. Nobody wants that job right now. Nobody's exactly looking forward to being the head of that particular country. But perhaps we'll be able to solve that problem.
Okay. The Iranian state media has said no, these conversations didn't happen. Trump has said he's talking to someone that it seems is the top guy, and the people that he's talking to based on the things that they're saying is happening, is really facts. He thinks they're in charge, but he doesn't want to reveal it because the person could be killed. So the person is running things there, but doesn't want anybody to know because then he's going to be killed. I mean, how much power does the guy have? Jenna Kleem gives us $5, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenna.
She says Trump fibbed, saying ain't so. I don't know.
As you said before, Michael, as someone said, I agree. This is the first time I've ever believed Iranian state media over the president of the United States. I mean, it's he not only because he's a pathological liar and he's been caught multiple times lying, but the fluidity of his story. It has no solidity. It's all air. Yeah, everything what he says in 1 second he contradicts it in the very next. We're dealing with somebody high up, as you said, but we can't reveal who it is because he's going to be killed, which makes me think he's not so high up. So
in fairness, he said it seems.
It seems.
So our commander in chief is willing to negotiate with someone. It seems is running things.
And he's also willing to share control.
Of course, it's not true. I don't believe
it's not true. But he's also willing to share control of the Straits.
Okay,
of
well,
Hormuz
hold on.
with the Ayatollah.
We're going to put that up there. You got ahead of the game here. Let's just see what he said here.
Will Iran still be able to control the flow of oil?
Be jointly controlled.
By who?
Maybe me. Maybe me.
You want the United States to be in
Me
control
and
of
the Ayatollah, whoever the Ayatollah is, whoever the next Ayatollah. Look, and there'll also be a form of a very serious form of a regime change. Now, in all fairness, everybody's been killed from the regime. They're really starting off. There's automatically a regime change. But we're dealing with some people that I find to be very reasonable, very solid. The people within know who they are. They're very respected. And maybe one of them will be exactly what we're looking for. Look at Venezuela, how well that's working out.
Well, yeah, so it's going to be the Ayatollah, maybe the Ayatollah, but not the Ayatollah because there's no one left to be the Ayatollah. But he's talking with very reasonable people that said no, they don't know what the hell he's talking about. So I mean, Akira Felix says something that really hits home for me. He says he's a massive shit talker. He would make a great comedian, but as president, he absolutely sucks. Because I find myself when he's talking, I'm like laughing, like this can't be real. But
No.
the problem is lives are at risk here, a lot of them. And our country is being run by this guy who you can't believe a word he says. He gave them a line in the sand tonight. If it's not open, he's hitting their infrastructure.
Yeah, so let's talk about Iran's response to that line in the sand. First of all, they said, we don't care about your line in the sand. If you attack our infrastructure, which affects civilians now, we're going to now assume the civilian targets in all of your in all the countries that harbor your military bases. So we're going to start attacking United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, desalinization plants, energy plants. And of course, that made Trump back down.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what it appears to have happened, right? It's hard to get inside the mind of a madman, but that is what it appears. So, yeah, they threatened that they were going to hit all these spots. Now, here's the thing: war's ugly, and there's no way to have war without suffering. But it seems like we've become accustomed now. We want war without death. We want war without any hardship on ourselves. We don't want any rising prices. We don't want to pay more for gas. So that's part of the equation that has to be thought about when we go on these, Trump called them excursions, right? So you have to take that into consideration. You also have to take into consideration the very real problem that if you do what he was threatening, it's not at all clear. If you hit their power infrastructure and start making the citizens suffer, it's not clear that they won't turn around and side with the regime. Now, I'm not saying they would or wouldn't, but normally that's what happens in these circumstances. So, You know, you just for me the most important thing is you don't make threats you're not willing to follow through on. Maybe Trump shouldn't have made that threat, but you don't make threats if you're not going to follow through.
Yeah, as you said, it appears that he drew a line in the sand. He was challenged by the Iranian regime, which seemed willing to go an extra mile to cause great hardship to the states that are our allies and potential allies, and he backed down. Now, that may not have been what happened, but that's the optics. And in the world of international affairs like this, where you're squaring off against an opponent like Iran, you cannot draw lines in the sand and then back down. Right. Because that is ultimately an encouragement to them. And remember, they have very little to do, Michael. All they have to do is keep the regime breathing.
Oh, I thought you meant they were bored.
No, meaning they have less to do than we do, right? We have to annihilate them completely. All they have to do is stay in the field. And so long as they stay in the field and keep the regime even symbolically alive, they win.
Right. Now, here's the thing. So now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, no. Here's where I think you make a very strong point from the other day, where I disagreed with you, I think, in scope, not in the basic principle. And that's this, that these mullahs over there are nihilists. They don't care. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. By and large. Now, I'm not saying they want to die. They're more than happy to let other people go die. But there's a lot of people that they don't care about being poor and they don't care about suffering. So you hit that infrastructure and hurt the people. They're not giving a shit. And the people might. I'm saying the mullahs don't. And then when they come back and say, okay, you do that and we're going to do this. And that, you hit somebody's desalination process. That's the process of turning seawater into drinkable water. You take that out and real suffering starts to happen on the part of a lot of people who then may not support this war. I just think that it's, like we've said a million times, this guy's got a big mouth. He's unpredictable. He's arbitrary and he just goes by his feelings. And by the way, that's just not based on our observing him. He said, I'll know when it's over when I feel it.
Which is frightening. That's a frightening metric. It should scare everybody in the electorate here in the United States, even abroad, that you have a guy at the helm of the most powerful military in the world who's just going by his feels, not by reason. But Michael, I suspect that Iran, though they have the will to do stuff like that, I don't know that they have the capacity
I don't know either.
To carry out their threat.
No, I have no idea.
I'm one to believe that I know that here's what I got from the stats that you sent me. There's a hard line in Iran that's about 10% of the population.
Okay, don't jump the gun, Mark. You got to wait because we have to.
Again?
Yes, because we have to give the context for what you're about to say.
All right, well, because this fits with respect to what I think an Iranian reaction would be to strike the infrastructure.
I want to react to what you just said, and then I'll give the appropriate segue. One of the problems I've had from the very start of this is the talking seems to vacillate between Iran is on the verge of a nuclear weapon and ICBMs that can hit us directly, and Iran's a paper tiger that we were able to defeat in 3 or 4 days. Everything's obliterated. They can do nothing. Those cannot both be true. Right?
Correct.
Right. They can't both be true. The intelligence has said that what did the intelligence claim the other day? Oh, not the other day, but the intelligence has been claiming they couldn't have an ICBM until at least 2035, and that they have no evidence that they're pursuing nuclear weapons. Now, there was the other day this attack on Diego Garcia, this base out there. And evidently these missiles that were fired at them were intermediate ballistic missiles, not ICBMs. They were intermediate range.
Uh-huh.
Now, here's the thing. One of them failed in the sky and the other one was shot down. So it's one of those situations where everybody gets to claim they're correct, right? The side that's been arguing they have more weapons than we know about gets to say, or Trump, actually said they had these, gets to say, look, they have these weapons. These weapons can hit Europe. But the other side gets to say, what the hell are you talking about? One of these things was shot down and one of them failed in midair. These people aren't a real threat to anybody. and all of the mixed messages that we get from this administration, from the intelligence community, and then when you add in, the podcast sphere and the various think tanks, it makes it very difficult to assess what's actually going on. So your point is taken. Does Iran even have the capability to do what they threatened? And the problem is, I have no idea whether they do or not.
When Rand testified, didn't she testify before the House on American Activities? If I remember correctly, she was one of the only people during the height of the Cold War who suggested that the Soviets were so frickin' incompetent that, they may have built up a massive nuclear arsenal, but it's questionable as to whether those things will even make it off the launch pad. What we have as a free country and basically free states working for us is our capacity to innovate, because we have basically free minds and a basically free society in which those minds can operate. The opposite is the case in an authoritarian, totalitarian state like Iran. So for us, that means that usually what they come up with is not very good. The product is shoddy. It's likely not to do what they think it's going to do, and if it does, it's usually a stroke of luck. And here in this case, when they fired missiles at Diego Garcia, we have the prime example of what happens with authoritarian, the military machine. Half of them fail and the other half are shot down, and only 3%, Michael, of what they send out when they literally try to saturate our defenses and overwhelm them. 3% of what they send gets through. Now, of course it's very costly for us to keep a defensive stance like that, but still, it tells me that, again, we're functioning on this premise that that evil is an equal and opposite power to the good, and it's simply not. And Michael, if we understood that as a culture, I think we would be less freaked out by China, by Russia, by Iran, because we would understand they simply don't have the epistemological capacity to be very strong for very long.
Okay, so I want Persephone two things. Can you check what's the source of this data that Christopher Schmidt is posting? It'll just be quicker than me asking him and all that. I'd just rather you do it. The other
some
thing
of that might be from your own, by the way.
Okay, I want to know where this information comes from. That my reason being is because if it's anything that's been released by our government, I don't buy it at all. Like I'm not.
Says it's Gemini.
Gemini is the source, Persephone? Oh,
that's what Christopher says. Yeah.
Okay, but that's not. I really want to know where they got it. They usually will post it. They give their source.
Yeah,
so,
Christopher,
anyways,
can you source that for us so we can see the sources? Thanks, man.
Yeah. So anyway, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Has said that the Iranian people are likely to overthrow the Islamic Republic regime. I think that we need boots on the ground, but they have to be Iranian boots, and I think they're coming, he says. Now, nothing I've seen elsewhere indicates that that's anywhere close to happening. I've not seen anything outside that ambassador's claim. But it did get me to thinking about something that I've looked into recently, and that's what you were about to get at. Is because somebody also asked me this morning on Facebook. You say you don't believe that the Iranians are going, to have freedom when this is done. And he asked me, what's the basis for my claim? And I said, well, first of all, nobody in the administration here is even talking about that any longer. He's actually saying that the regime is going to stay intact. The Islamic Republic, even if they're different leaders. Of course, he just said something different, but, it's different every day. But there's also the fact that there is no... Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. But then there's also the fact that there's no organized group that is ready to take power. There's no organized opposition. There's no organized coalition. So what I did was I got from a variety of sources this morning the different sort of factions, ethnicities, groups that operate in Iran, and that's what you were talking about. Now, Persephone says that those claims come from Israeli military spokespeople or aligned sources. No neutral body has confirmed them, so I'm skeptical. They might be true, but I'm skeptical. So go ahead, Mark.
I mean, it's certainly what the Israelis hope to happen. It's certainly what the Iranian diaspora has been telling the rest of the world, but it's not necessarily what's going on in Iran. In Iran, there seems to be a small faction of extremely united conservatives who are regime supporters. They are Islamicists, and they are immovable. And that's 10% of the population. Unfortunately, they control the Basij, the IRCG. They control intelligence, and they control communications. They're pretty much the oligarchy that's running things in Iran. And the rest of the population is broken up into multiple factions, some of whom are monarchists, some of whom are liberals, some of whom are secular, some of whom aren't, who are not united in any way, have no means of uniting because the IRGC is controlling communications, so they can't unite, and they have no weapons. And so there's no concerted effort on the ground, Michael. No united front of people that simply oppose the regime and agree to the type of regime that should be taking over after the mullahs are gone. They're very fractured. They can't communicate with each other, and they're not armed.
Right. So depending on the source, I mean, there's no universal agreement exactly how these factions fit with each other, or what the actual factions are. But there is. I want to just find it here. I have it somewhere. There is, some basic, what's the word I'm looking for, understanding of it. And I'm trying to pull up the Reuters article. Or rather, do you have the article, Mark, that I'm talking about? Maybe I just didn't send it to you. Let me just check. Ceasefire. Okay, right here, Reuters.com. So, according to Reuters, they, let me go through here. You have the monarchists. You have the People's Mujahideen Organization. Now, these are the sort of radical, Sunni Muslims. They're not a very large faction, but they are there. You also have ethnic minority groups, protest movements. So from what I could gather, the Sunni group, nobody likes them over there. They don't like them because they sided with Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war. The reform movement has no credibility any longer over there. That's, I guess, was the people behind the Green Revolution. They're not very backed. There's a significant amount of the population, I believe it's over 40%, who is okay with an authoritarian strongman running the country. Beyond that, no group seems to have more than 20 or 25%. The monarchists seem to be they have the most, but the 10% that backs the regime are the ones with the actual weapons and the infrastructure, and they're also the craziest. Right? They're the ones that you talked about that were nihilist. Now, when it comes to ethnic groups, there's the Kurds, and there's this other group that I had never heard of this morning. I forget what they're called. Let me see. The Baluchis, not Jim Belushi's. They're Baluch. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but nonetheless, they're Kurdish, and the Baluchs are two of these ethnic groups. Now, these groups don't want to even be part of Iran. They want to be autonomous. The best chance of anything, according to what I saw this morning, would be to have some sort of federalism over there, but that's not looking to be a very, likely thing. So given that the administration has said, has not been talking about freedom for the Iranians lately, has actually talked about the administration, the current regime staying intact, is talking about it being over, given that there's no rising opposition in sight that I can see, and given the fragmented nature of the population, I'm confident in saying that the idea that Iranians are going to gain freedom is a very, very long shot.
I mean, it's looking a little bit more like that every day. I was taken in by the Iranian diaspora they represent themselves as they would. They've left Iran, so and they have the intention of leaving Iran. They're probably very hostile to the regime. That there was a greater percentage of people within Iran that wanted to see the regime out. Now, there are other polls that I think you showed me, Michael, that show a high percentage of people are dissatisfied with the regime,
like 90% or something like that. Hate the regime.
They don't like the regime, and it's entirely possible that us attacking their infrastructure and putting the Iranian people in a state of deprivation could anger them towards the regime and not cause this nationalistic solidarity. There is that possibility. Of course, it's a gamble on our part to take it. I, of course, think that, in war, it's the object to make the enemy as uncomfortable as possible. In this case, the Iranian people should be uncomfortable as possible and the Iranian regime is responsible for the Iranian people suffering right now, and they should take that ire out appropriately on the mullahs and the confrontational style of the Islamic Republic, which has been a thorn in the side of the world for 50 fucking years. It is time to go. But I don't know, Michael, that we have a commander-in-chief who's got the mental cohesiveness to be able to bring this about. I really don't.
No, I mean, I was speaking specifically about the freedom of the Iranian people, which I agree with you. In war, that ought not to be our primary goal, although it could be a very, very happy side effect of the war. That would be, of course, wonderful if they develop some semblance of a free society. All I'm saying is that it doesn't appear like that's even in the talking anymore or anywhere near on anybody's radar, except for this one Israeli ambassador. Christopher Smith says, never tell me the odds. And then he says, Han Solo, anybody? Well, Han Solo ended up frozen for quite some time, and then he ended up getting murdered by his own kid. So I don't know if he's the guy we really want to be looking for inspiration.
The suffering of the Iranian people is not something Trump cares about. This is true. He makes that very clear in almost every stupid thing he says publicly. Just look at how happy he was about it. Yeah, I mean, Michael, to watch this guy talk to the press about Venezuela, about Iran, he's just not a serious guy. He doesn't seem to understand how catastrophic the things are to the people on the ground. Like, for example, with Venezuela, let's just take Venezuela for example. The Venezuelan diaspora around the world were so happy that this was happening. They thought there was going to be real regime change. Instead, because he's got a beef with Machado, he wouldn't help install the people who were legitimately elected in the last democratic election and went for a woman who is worse than Maduro, arguably, because she's going along with what he wants. How disheartening is that to any dissident on the ground to see that a guy who's not really willing to topple a communist regime out of the principle, he's willing to work with them, compromise with them, and make deals with them. Dude, if I hear we're about to make a deal, if I hear something like that woman, I think I'm going to throw up. I can't stand the word deal anymore.
Okay, I don't really like it either, but don't do that on the show. We like that. That wouldn't be good.
It's going to be an involuntary reflex, I'm afraid.
Reflux?
Reflex.
Because it could be reflux as well.
They could. They both work.
You have a reflexive reflux.
True.
Perhaps.
True.
Hey, do you want to, before we move on, do you want to recommend that video maybe? The one that we recently watched from ARI?
Yeah. So everybody, we've been getting a lot of crap from the objectivist world right now, who are, I think, feeling a little bit of a high. It may be diminishing now over the fact that an American government has finally chosen to take on Iran, and Iran's been at war with us for 50 years, and isn't it a glorious thing? This very, very seminal, geopolitical event may be happening in our lifetime. All of those folks have been against Michael and I for standing for the Constitution and rule of law.
Well, not all. I mean, let's not.
Not all.
A lot of
a number of objectivists, and yes. One objectivist even told us, "Look, you got to go to Ankar Gate. Ankar Gate will set you straight." Basically, is what he said, as if we were lacking something conceptually, or epistemology was a little bit off. If we just got the word from the man himself, the deity now of objectivism after Leonard Peikoff, then we would change our minds and come over to the right side. Well, the New Ideal just published a discussion between Ankar Ghate and Ilan Journo. I think
And I just posted it to both Facebook and X, and you previously posted it to Facebook.
I previously posted it to Facebook with a little bit of a ha ha ha. Look at now
A snarky. Yeah, it was snarky.
a little snarky. Now the people who count are coming around to our perspective. Yeah, thank you. And maybe this will change the minds of folks like Andrew Bernstein. I don't know.
Can I share with you some of the quotes from this episode?
Yes, because they're pretty good. So go ahead.
Yes. Okay. The war, which they won't call a war because you need congressional authorization to have a war, which they did not have. And if it's not, even they didn't seek. It's not that they sought it and got turned down by Congress and then said or thought, yeah, but this threat is so dire, we're going to act anyway. That would have been a problem. So even that, they say, would have been a problem. But they didn't even do that. It was like, we don't need to get Congress to buy in. Then they said they should be going to Congress, and the war needs to be, it is a war. It needs to be justified and approved by Congress, and the bypassing that I think is really dangerous, because that's the issue of the imminent threat. And is it a war? It is a war. It needs to be, and that's for the sake of upholding the rule of law and the separation of powers and what would be a bulwark against more authoritarianism in the American system. One of the rationale we've heard for why there was no action to bring this to Congress is that it was an imminent threat and they had to act, and Congress is leaky, and this would have cost America the element of surprise. The idea that this has to be justified as an imminent threat is ridiculous. And I happen to agree, but for the sake of doing it without Congress, then it does. We don't need to get the American people's buy-in. And then they say, so people have rightly contrasted the lead up to the Iraq war and how much debate there was. There was discussion, debate, and a vote. There was none in regard to what happened in Iran. That's so going to be so dramatically increased if the administration doesn't feel the need to make a case for this and to get buy-in of the people and the people's representatives, which is Congress. So there's kind of a contempt that's projected, that you need widespread approval for this, and that lends itself to authoritarianism, what they've done. We already are in having a war on our hands that isn't being properly justified or defended to the American people. Then this is how authoritarianism works, by the arbitrary. Then the people who were more arbitrary are going to be the people who emerge. The absence of a purpose and the arbitrariness of how it's being conducted lend themselves to that risk becoming greater and greater the more the economic cost, the more the military cost rises, when what should be happening is, this is our principle, we're defending American freedom from a threat, this is the nature of the threat, here's the moral basis for what we're doing, and we're going to continue until we achieve this goal. I think that's the biggest thing missing here.
Touche.
Sounds familiar. Now, somebody actually thought that what you meant was, somebody said on Facebook today that you were implying that they watched our show and that's where they got the information.
No.
And I said no. The point is that there were so many people so critical of us. And by the way, Mark, many of those people are praising this video for offering the intellectual clarity that has been so missing after basically making fun of us in our position.
I hope you're pointing that out on Facebook, because I haven't been seeing that. But I
did to the guy. I'm not like, I don't want to get into a big "I told you so" thing. I really don't. That's not. I mean, I not that I don't like a big "I told you so" sometimes. I do, but in this case, it's not even about the "I told you so." It's about something that to me has been crystal clear from the very beginning, and that that nobody actually, well, outside Jim Valiant made a logical case, but I think he was wrong. But nobody else has really made a case against the position, and I'll state it once again, because there seems to be confusion. Iran is absolutely evil. Iran has attacked the United States overseas on numerous occasions. That is unequivocal. The Iranian regime deserved to die. That's also unequivocal. Then come my concerns. First, if you go to war, you need to have a declaration by Congress per the Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. That's the first hurdle. Second, why is it being presented as so imminent when our own intelligence has said that we're not at risk of being attacked by Iran, that they're not developing a nuclear program? Now, look, they enriched the 60%. That's cause for concern for me. But the mixed messages coming from our intelligence and our leadership concern me. Then there's the fact of who's in office, that he's an arbitrary emotionalist whom I do not trust to tell me the truth about what's going on or to execute the war possibly. And then there's the lack of solid objectives in the war. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Is it freedom for the Iranians? Is it is it regime change? Is it ending the nuclear capabilities? Is it all of the above? How do we know when it's over? And Trump feels it. Just not my thing. So, I mean, but the Constitution is my objection. The rest of it fuels my skepticism, which could be overcome if somebody bothered. And I don't mean somebody on Facebook or on a podcast. I mean somebody from the government that was executing the war actually made a coherent argument.
And they're not. And, they would have to do that to the American people if they followed the Constitution. And then, Michael, the war would have a real policy guiding it, as opposed to what happens when the executive runs things. And it's basically in the hands of unelected bureaucrats, military techies, and the president of the United States. And it's out of the hands of the American people, where it needs to be, as I've said multiple times, because it's you and I and our children who pay the fucking price. So we should have a say in whether or not these things go forward. If our children are going to die in a foreign land, the children should have a say. We should have a say. Since we're going to pay for it in one way or another. So the president won't pay for it. The executive won't pay for it. None of these unelected people in the deep state will pay for it. We will.
I just want to be clear, because of Kira Felix's comment. ARI, these guys did not flat out in this video say they were opposed to the war. They just pointed out the problems with it. They also didn't say, and neither have we, that this should stop immediately until they, get a declaration of war. That they're in very, what's the word I'm looking for here, precarious circumstances right now. So I wouldn't do that. But I am concerned about the way that the war is being run, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they said, the title of the show is Right War, Wrong President, right? Something like that. So, I mean, they understand it to be just that the Iranian regime is taken out. We just don't have anybody at the helm who, one, respects the Constitution, or two, understands the geopolitical principles of governance and or how to run the military. Or he's simply a guy operating on whim. That is a frightening thing. Every objectivist should know that. Any non-objectivist out there who doesn't understand what those concepts mean, they're thrown around quite a bit in objectivism, should learn about it a little bit. You got a president who's openly admitted this war is over when he feels like it. And he makes decisions based on his feelings, not on, a compilation of evidence, an entire context, a huge context for a president of the United States, but on what he feels in the moment. Now that's a frightening thing, guys. It's no way to live a life, let alone govern a country.
No, you're absolutely correct there, Mark. Well said. That's really all I have to add to that. I mean, I'll add this is that, ultimately Americans have died already. Americans are getting hurt. It better be worth it. You know what I mean? Like, Lindsey Graham, I don't know if you saw, Lindsey Graham said, look, we took Iwo Jima. We could take this. Thousands and thousands of Americans died at Iwo Jima.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what Lindsey Graham's recommending? I don't.
Yeah, but there was a will to stop Japanese imperialism. There was the will on the part of the American people to stop Japanese imperialism, and the government, because the American people were behind it, had that direct goal, and they weren't going to stop until they got it. Now, we don't have anything similar like that guiding the policy over in the Middle East right now. We have a very fractured policy that's resting on the whims of a guy and hopes. And the people who are supporting this guy, who's whimsical, are hoping, like Bernstein. Should I go with the guy who may help me? I don't know. I don't think that's the only choice. I don't think the choice for Andrew Bernstein is really, do I go with the people who want to kill me on the left, or do I go with the guy who may help me in the form of this right-wing nationalist? No. How about you go for the people of principle and you start building that up, right? And you do have an alternative to the ones that he claims. You're not throwing your vote away by not voting for a Trump. You're not throwing your vote away by standing on principle. You're actually doing what I think a voter should do. And that's very powerful, whether you know it now or not. Yes, Michael, what was the other topic we were going to do another topic here?
I sent you a few things. One of them had to do with ICE. Because the Congress evidently can't come to an agreement on how to fund the Department of Homeland Security. The Democrats have demands, Republicans have demands, and it doesn't seem like it's happening. There's plenty of finger pointing going on. But in the meantime, because the TSA is down people at the airports, Trump has come up with the idea to set ICE at the airports.
Yeah, in places, Michael, where they're having these difficulties, those places probably aren't very ICE friendly too. I got to be honest with you. New York, is it Chicago where they're probably having difficulties? Atlanta, they're having difficulties. I don't know, maybe Atlanta's more ICE friendly than the rest of the country, but I mean, I think it's a bad move. I think what Elon Musk proposed to do was far better, which was pay the salaries of the TSA agents in the interim so that they have money coming in, so that they're inspired to come to work and they're not quitting. I think somewhere over 200 or so agents have quit. A lot of them are calling in sick. Remember, they are considered a what do they call it for the COVID era? The jobs
essential workers.
Essential workers. So as an essential worker, you have no will of your own. You are forced to go in because society needs you. And so the TSA workers are in that realm, Michael. But of course, they've been calling in sick because they haven't had a paycheck in 2 weeks. And I don't blame them. Yeah. But here, Elon Musk has chosen to come in and step up. Look, Michael, I think in a capitalist society, we wouldn't have this issue. Why? Because airports would be privatized. The security would be privatized. Yeah. They would be independent of the federal government, folks. And so you wouldn't have these stupid issues where a warring tribal Congress could hold you hostage in your everyday life because they can't work out their divorce.
Sound points, Mark. I just will add that I do not like the idea of ICE being at the airports. I don't think they're trained for that. Even when they have been trained, there's been a lot of issues. Now we're putting them at airports. They said they won't be part of screening. I don't really know what they're going to be doing, but
I think
it seems like it's ripe for problems.
Because he also suggested, Michael, that they might be doing their immigration enforcement there at the airport. I don't know. It sends a chill up my spine, for anybody traveling to be potentially the subject of an immigration investigation, or to be pulled out of line by armed and camouflaged men and taken to a secret room somewhere to be interrogated. Come on. One of the things, Michael, I don't like about Europe, and there's a lot of things I don't like about Europe, but when you're walking down any street in Paris, you will often see 7 or 8 camouflaged, berated people with automatic weapons slung to their chest walking down the street en masse, right? This is what is supposed to be the police force in Paris. Since you're not really allowed to own a firearm there, they have basically what looks like a militia force of people, a militarized police force that roam the streets. That makes me as an American very, very uncomfortable. I don't like militarized police. I think Americans are constitutionally antagonistic towards government, one, but a militarized police force for another, because they understand that you see those things in unfree states, right? An armed society is a free society. when militarized police can walk around airports like the way ICE is, frankly, a militarized form of police, you're living in a state that is not entirely free.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just would comment to Christopher Smith. Christopher Smith up here says he's talking about the war. He says it's legal given 80 years of precedent. Unfortunately, would be my position. I don't know why, if it's your position, you would say unfortunately. But he says, but yes, it's unconstitutional. So many things are. I would even challenge the idea that it's 80 years of precedent. I've made that argument myself that we haven't actually declared war since World War II. But Ilya Soman, you should check out my interview with Professor Soman on this very channel. He says that that's actually not accurate. And his point was that you just need congressional authorization. They don't actually have to come out and say, we do hereby declare war. That's not actually what they need to do. He knows far more about the Constitution than I do. He is maybe one of the top constitutional scholars in the country. But he points out that even, with the Vietnam War, there was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. With the Iraq War, there was a congressional approval for that. There was congressional approval for the war on terror. So while there has been the Korean War as an older example, things where there wasn't congressional approval. It's not a straight up look. Congress has just stayed silent for the last 80 years. So that's the full precedent.
Well, I mean, Michael, this is what a lot of objectivists are complaining about, which is shocking to me. That look, Congress has reneged on its legislative responsibility for the last 80 years. They're weak. They've ceded power to the executive for so long that you need a powerful executive now to take control. It's not even about giving the power back to Congress to do what it's constitutionally appointed to do. So, Michael, it's sort of like the argument of people with affirmative action who say they're going to undo prejudice by practicing it, by institutionalizing racism. You're certainly not going to make the Constitution any more abided by the government by not abiding by the Constitution. At some point, you have to get back to basics, man.
So I've got some breaking news, I guess. The Iran military media, which is in Iran, this X account, they have Trump's. So Trump's post from this morning said this on Truth Social. I am pleased, not pleased. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Then he goes on to talk about how he's not going to bomb, like we already discussed. The Iran military media has reposted this with a comment to it. They're outright making fun of him. This is so
who didn't see that coming? Who wouldn't see that coming?
So this is what they say, because he said they've been negotiating for 2 days. Right? This is what they say. Are you negotiating with us from 2 days ago? But your deadline threat tweet was from 24 hours ago. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And they put an exclamation point at the end of it. The Iran military media is openly on X making fun of the buffoon we have for a commander-in-chief. And according to Republicans Against Trump, who I found to be rather credible in their reporting, I don't have time to fact check it, so take it for what it's worth. They say just in, Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf denies reports he's been negotiating with the United States. Quote, all Iranian officials stand firmly behind their supreme leader and people until this goal is achieved. No negotiations have been held with the U.S., and fake news is used to manipulate the financial and oil markets and escape the quagmire in which the U.S. and Israel are trapped.
I mean, Michael, if anybody can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, it is this guy. I mean, he's so unbelievably disorganized. I don't know of anybody, Michael, who would make the statement, draw the line in the sand, and then lie outright like this and not understand that, one, you can't draw a line in the sand first place without actually anticipating that the other guy's going to cross it and knowing what you're going to do when that happens. And two, lying. All of this is used as propaganda now, and it makes America look, the most powerful military in the world, the most powerful country in the world, look like idiots.
Well, they're shit posting him now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is absurd. Like, this is the stuff that you see from like Mark Levin and Dave Smith. And now the president of the United States is in with it. Yeah. And now the president of the United States is involved in it.
I'm not so surprised, Michael, because it seems like every time he talks, especially on social media, it's like I go back to the 7th grade playground. That's what it feels like.
You know, before I move to this, I want to say I'm sick of talking about this. Like, I like talking philosophy, economics, domestic politics, but we can't just ignore this. And given that we can't just ignore this, when I open my news feed in the morning, which is rather substantial, I'm not going to ignore what's happening, right? And I'm not relying on left-wing media. These are Trump's own statements that we're hearing and the response from the Iranians. This is not like, CBS is telling me that the economy is headed in a bad direction. That's not what's occurring here. So, yeah, I would like to start talking about other things as well, but this is the biggest story in the news. And if we didn't discuss it, quite frankly, there'd be little else to discuss. But there was a story that I found a little humorous, Mark, about it was in Reason magazine, and Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, had previously told Republicans, basically, you're not welcome here, get out of the state, you don't share our values. And I think she actually told them go to Florida. And now she's saying, because the tax base is abandoning New York because of the high taxes, she's asking them to please come back. Like, this is more, how do these people become the leaders? I don't, like, it's insane to me.
Michael, we live in a spoils system democracy, and I feel what they do is they appeal to the people they're going to give the spoils to.
Yeah,
that's
vote
it.
Larry Elder. I guarantee you Larry Elder won't do, not Larry Elder, Larry Sharp. I guarantee Larry Sharp won't do this.
Yes, we endorse the American Capitalist Party. We endorse Larry Sharp. So please vote for him for governor of New York. If you really want to get out of the morass in there that the left and, frankly, a delinquent right has given you in New York, if you want taxes to be lowered, if you want to be able to live, and happily keep what you've earned, please vote for Larry Sharp. I mean, aren't you guys done with these idiots, these morons that try to affect change, social change, economic change through using force against you and legislating laws against you? The everyday person who's just trying to work, make a living, send their kids to school, enjoy their retirement, whatever it is you want to do. If the American Capitalist Party were in, we wouldn't bother you folks. We'd leave you alone, and we'd only be there when somebody tried to hurt you. That would be our job, to protect your rights.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. We're up now to 778 subscribers on the show. We're getting up there. We're gonna have 1,000 in no time. So share the program, tell your friends. And also, I was a little pessimistic and a little wrong. I don't hate to say it's true when I said that our viewership is down. So the episode before last got 537 views. The episode before that got 330 views. Before that, 285, and a bunch of them in between there got 300. One's got 591, 285. So we are getting, the views are going up, the subscriptions are going up. Spread the word, spread the news. I promise you one thing: we do due diligence on this show when it comes to gathering information. So. And you can see that if you go to X, where we've posted, and Facebook, where we've posted for today. And we're going to do that, I guess, Persephone, from now on. We're going to do that from now on. So there'll be a lot to read if you're so inclined.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, folks, this message needs to get out there in the world, man. People need to replace collectivism, altruism with individualism. Help us do that, please. Go ahead, Michael.
So, we like to discuss the answers to the question. The other day the question you asked was, I usually get answers to my questions, but the other day your question was, those 1,000 views that were not authentic views, Akira. Those were not organic views. What was I going to say now? Oh, I usually get at least a few answers. You didn't get any to your question from the other day. Yeah.
What was my question again?
Your question was who would win in a fight between Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee. But I actually, tried to look into it. Of course, no. But the hypothetical answer that I got from some LLM was that if it were a tournament fight, Chuck Norris would undoubtedly win. If it were a street fight, Bruce Lee likely has the advantage.
Yeah, but then I said, but
I know what you said, but I know your answer.
Go
ahead. You could give your answer.
Well, because Chuck he's a black belt in judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Tang Sudo. He's a master of multiple arts in the way that Bruce Lee was. I think Bruce Lee's faster. He's stronger. I don't know if he's
Jeet Kune Do. He created his own.
I know he did. But so did Benny Yakitis. Yakita Khan. I mean, Benny Yakitis was a famous kickboxer. Benny the Jet Yakitis. I used to train at his.
How did you? What does this guy matter?
So Benny Yakitis.
No, but why does he matter in the discussion about Bruce
Lee? Because he made
up
his own. Because he made up his own.
But we're not at.
Style of martial arts too.
We're not.
But
talking.
they're sort of irrelevant. Sensei Yoshida made up his own martial art too. So what?
No.
Can he defend himself? I don't know.
Who? Chuck Norris? I mean, no, Bruce Lee? The point is, Sensei. Bruce Lee also took, I believe, Kung Fu. Am I wrong about that? Yeah. What did he take before? So he's a black belt in Kung Fu?
Wushu or something.
And then developed his own, is lightning fast.
Yeah.
Okay. So now it's your turn. I've wasted enough time here. I've gotten you to the finish line. I've done my job. Now give the capitalist thought of the day. I'll ask a question. We can do our post-show recap, and I can move on with my life.
Folks, if anything, I think this current conflict shows us that the executive needs to be restrained. The executive needs to be restrained by a constitution, and the legislature needs to pick up its constitutional responsibilities with respect to declarations of war. And if a president thinks that there is an imminent threat based on the intelligence that he's getting, he needs to make his appeal to the people through the representatives. And that is the way a capitalist society would be. There would be a strict division of powers. The government could not do anything outside of what it is, of what the Constitution says it can do. And of course, there is a liberal system for changing the Constitution called the amendment process. And that is the way laws get amended in a capitalist society. The Constitution is not the Bible, folks, but it's the rule of law. And the men understand that in order to maintain freedom, we need rule of law, not rule of men. And a capitalist society is one in which rule of law is what wins the day. So go ahead, Michael.
All right. So the question is, I already asked it, but I want to ask it again because I think that this belied my earlier claim. I don't think I got answers to this question. My question is, what topics would you like to see us discuss that have been under our radar? What topics do you think that we should be discussing that we have not discussed so far? I'd really like to know. Also, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and remember that and go to YouTube and answer my question, please. We need the comments there, and tune in today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on this very channel for Everyday Ethics. Sure to be a great discussion. Persephone always comes with something good. And I think it'll be both edifying and fun. All right, Mark, take us out.
I expect nothing less. Thank you, guys. We'll see you here tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. That gives you 23 hours to check your premises. So you know what you should be doing between now and then? Check your premises. Peace.